House music in the 1980s and 90s was a liberating and niche genre percolating through nightclubs and warehouses. Radio talking heads, disc jockeys, and fans helped establish its roots in every corner of the city during this period. One of the key individuals responsible for house music's accessibility and rise was DJ Disciple. Growing up in the city and cutting his teeth at college radio, DJ Disciple became known for his soulful house playlist, lively personality, and ability to build others up. He was one of the earliest DJs to include female DJs on his radio shows. Also, when he moved to the UK, he helped introduce house music to many UK listeners, which ultimately contributed to the foundation of garage music. By the early 2000s, DJ Disciple was a Grammy-nominated, world-renowned DJ with the US Billboard Hot Dance Club #1 song. Our conversation dives deep into his early days in house music, tours around the world, residencies, his memoir, and the amazing dancers, DJs, managers, and club promoters that made house grow along the way. DJ Disciple was incredibly humble and a true gentleman. You are going to learn a ton about the men and women who helped build the infrastructure of house music and how the sausage was made from him. My job in the interview is to give the listener a bit about how DJ Disciple fits into that glorious story. Enjoy. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the If Ever You're Listening podcast. I'm your host, Stanley C. And today we have a great, special, iconic guest, the one, the only DJ Disciple. David, thank you for coming. How's your day going so far?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the blessing. And hey, I really appreciate the work that you're doing on Medium. It's an incredible platform where you're able to cover such a broad variety of artists, and such artistry should be noticed all the time.
Amen. Well, that's why I'm excited to talk to you, and I feel like your story is inspiring for others that are coming up in music, and a lot of the my readers are younger and learning about the industry for the first time. So I can't wait to dive deeper into your career and pull some of the lessons from it. So as well as talk about the book. Okay, but before we get into that, tell me about what was David like growing up? And how did music enter your life in a significant way?
So I was born in music, basically. My father played with Miles Davis,
Mhm.
and he played piano. And so my dad, he went to World War, he fought in World War II, and he met my mom
Mm.
at the Savoy Ballroom. And um, they came from two different spaces,
Mm.
right? So my mom basically, she came from a troubled childhood in the sense of my grandfather was he was a preacher from a church background.
Mhm.
So my grandmother got pregnant at 14.
Mm.
And because of that, my grandfather kicked my grandmother out. And my mother had to, my grandmother, she had to go, and my mother had to go within her sisters. They had a number of sisters. And so my dad fought in World War II. He was blown out of a truck, and they didn't have those healing practices for PTSD like they do now. And so my father really wanted all of us to get into music.
Mm.
And the long and short of it is that my brother Stanley Banks wound up playing for George Benson.
Mhm.
My brother Larry Banks started writing for Jeff Brown. As a matter of fact, he wrote for Uptown Records, MCA. And so P. Diddy at the time was his intern. He would run errands for him from back in the days. So when I came into it, we all went to the Riverside. Well, me and my brother Larry, we was involved in a Riverside, a drum corps.
Mm.
And so we was really, really into it. I played the drums, and I was learning how to play, drums. And so there was a center called Dr. White Community Center. And that was an outlet for a lot of kids that wanted to get out of trouble to stay in this one place. And it was a community that helped other parents.
Mm.
My brother Sherman, he was my oldest brother. He was a construction worker back at that time. He was like a civil rights union's leader for like making sure that blacks wasn't fired from their jobs. And he created a platform where blacks can get hired from construction jobs that they were neglected for. So you had all those things coming up. So I was an introvert, and Dr. White was one of the places that kind of helped me get out of being an introvert. At
Mm.
that time, one of the book discusses about the early DJ culture.
Yep.
And the early DJ culture describes a DJ that lived in the same building as us, which was Grandmaster Flowers. And
Mm.
Grandmaster Flowers was one of the pioneer mobile DJs. He used to play football with my brother.
Mhm.
So I came up with a landscape of music.
Yep.
And basically, there was a lot of different aspects of my childhood growing up that I describe in the book.
Mm.
And one of them was the church.
Yep.
Because my brother Larry, he was interested in the church because he loved the gospel records. My brother Leighton had put us on. But my mother forbade us to go because of the hurt of feeling, obviously disjointed and so forth with what the church did with our childhood. She didn't trust people in the church and so forth. And so even though, you know how kids, we're going to do the opposite of what our mothers tell us to do. So that's kind of how that went down with Larry and I.
Wow.
And so I wound up joining the choir. Larry was, minister of music at that time. And we pressed through because, we had our faith belief system. And at that time, the 5% Nation was really strong. And they would challenge you just by you saying, if you believe in God. They would say, well, I'm God and the white man's the devil and blah, 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 blah. So, there was a lot of different faith integration within our community.
Mm.
And so I started getting into the church, and it came at the right time because it was pre-crack epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the crack epidemic hit, I was in college, right? And so me going, I had transitioned because I was singing at the Church of the Open Door, but they didn't really give me a platform to play drums because of the style of preaching that preacher had done, Reverend Keeler. So what winds up happening is, hey, I get introduced to the Greater Refuge Temple, and that's the church I decide to go to. And by a certain amount of time, I'm playing for like every kind of choir in the church. So I'm moving along and so forth. And hey, I'm starting to get a grasp. Meanwhile, Stanley is finding his success, not just playing for George Benson, but Aretha Franklin, The Temptations, Stevie Wonder. He's doing a lot of great shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so this book really shows the musical journey that I had in house music, right? Because, but it also tells what New York City was like,
Yep.
on this musical journey. And as I said, my grandma, she was thrown out of 14 for getting pregnant, and that happened in a church household. And so my mother carried that pain, right? And she lost the trust in the church, and she didn't want her kids near it. So when I started like my DJ journey, there was people from different backgrounds, and I understood what my mother went through, right? And so I recognized that energy. And so that's why I played at certain spaces, even though I had my faith, I understood. And at that time, my mother finally came around because the Church of the Open Door had a different pastor. And at that pastor, before that, there was a book that came out by Janet McDonald. And the book really talked about her struggle in Farragut housing, where I lived. Well, this pastor, he kind of embraced that struggle, and he kind of showcased like what happens when you don't leave the hood. There's a lot of good things. So the church stepped up, and they started having HIV screenings, NA meetings, outreach. People that battle addiction, they would have these NA meetings for people like that. And one of the women was Janet McDonald's sister, Joyce McDonald. Matter of fact, later on, my daughter, she joins the church as far as a whole ministry she started called Keep Your Pearls Girls. So, my childhood was like, on a path of spirituality, but then somewhere along the line, that's how I graduated and gravitated towards house music. But as you'll see in the interviews.
I love this. And thank you so much, David, for that thorough breakdown because I want to take us to the college radio. I want to take us to the best kept secret, and WNYE 91.5 FM, because this is where you really break through as a respected house DJ. But tell me about kind of those early periods playing music because you're doing something new. You're playing house, but you're also playing gospel and you're sharing the DJ booth with women and you're kind of being very innovative in this space. But tell me kind of why you were making these decisions and what was motivating you at the time.
So a guy named by the name of Cool D, Ralph Davis, introduced me to radio. And because I was a journalist at that time, I was writing for the Ticker magazine and I was talking about contemporary gospel at that time, which was frowned upon. People like the Winans, the Commission didn't come from traditional gospel backgrounds. And so I wanted to help promote that. And then by doing that, I came up with the name DJ Disciple as a reminder that only what you do for Christ shall last. And so they started doing these functions, and there was a scene. This was the very first scene that I play in the book, which was at the Empire roller skating rink. And I was mentored by a guy named DJ Big Bob, who was also the understudy of Grandmaster Flowers. So what winds up happening is, I get into it, and then a guy named DJ Jazz, he introduces me to house music. And I'm immediately drawn to it because of the moral messages that it has, right? So house music I found to be morally neutral. It doesn't speak bad about women, no cursing, no none of that. So I'm starting to get into it, and I learned how to mix from a guy named DJ Rich Lamont.
Mm.
What winds up happening is somebody from the college station, they heard my mix and they're like, look, would you like to, be a part of me playing? Before that, we started something like the Sound Experience Crew. But at Hunter College, this was like 87, 88, we took it to the next level. And so it was at Studio 54 where I first saw Larry Levan. Now,
Mm.
my boy Jazz had told me about the Paradise Garage.
Mhm.
And the Paradise Garage was like the mecca for Black kids that were going to college that got into house music. And
Mm.
so I was like, yeah, sure. So at the same time, I wanted to branch out because I was loving house music so much. I took an internship at WNYE 91.5 FM.
Yep.
And so it allowed me to create a platform for myself as being one of the only DJs playing house music on the radio. And so as doing that, I was deep into vinyl culture, but inevitably my taste grew so much that I was getting I got a test pressure from a woman named Gladys Pizarro, who was the A&R for Strictly Rhythm Records.
Mhm.
And so she gives me a promo. At that same time, I'm linking up with a guy named Roger Sanchez,
Mhm.
who's selling his tapes on the streets. And so at this time, a guy named Greg Day and Camacho, they started hearing about me on the radio. And they asked me to become part of Wild Pitch, right? So Wild Pitch has its own legion of DJs, Bobby Condors, David Camacho, Nick Jones, and so forth. I get into that and I find success in it.
Mhm.
While on the radio, I started breaking down barriers in music. One of the places that I wound up interviewing and playing at, it was a venue called The Choice. So The Choice is a place where Frankie Knuckles, who was the godfather of the house, had come back from Chicago to New York, and Larry Levan had shared this residency. And this residency took place because David Mancuso, who was a pioneering DJ from the Loft, wanted to take a sabbatical. He wanted to take a break. So Richard Vasquez intervened and he named his night The Choice. And so Frankie Knuckles, Larry Levan, Dave Morales, and I would alternate with Larry Levan on Thursday nights at The Choice.
Mhm.
And David Mancuso had this ethos, like where the Paradise Garage had gay nights and straight nights, he kind of left it open for everybody,
Mm.
right? And so a lot of people at that time, they was really in the classics mode. They wanted to relive those Paradise Garage times.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was a critic of it because I wanted to kind of create my own path.
Yeah.
And I was breaking a lot of this new music. And
Mm.
what wound up happening is the Wild Pitch Party became a gypsy party where we would move from place to place. So we would go to the tunnel, we would go to Mars, we would go all these different places. And so while that was happening, I wound up becoming more important on the scene because I was breaking records like Follow Me and Hot Music before the radio stations even got to it.
Mhm.
One record called I'll Be Your Friend was broken, and Dave Morales wasn't really too fond of it. So what wound up happening is I get blackballed
Mhm.
because there were certain people that didn't want me to do these pre-release promoing on the radio. There was people that's for it, and there were people that were against it. And just like anything else. So what wound up happening was I started breaking barriers within my own sound and looking out for my own thing and building my own ecosystem. One of the things that happened was I got exposed to another scene. So I was in the roller skating gospel scene, then I was in the college scene, and then from the college scene, I graduated to the underground scene with Wild Pitch and the Choice.
Yep.
Then came the New Jersey house scene
Yep.
because Tony Humphries left for Ministry of Sound. And when he left, I was playing at a club called 280.
Mhm.
That crowd really got big, and then we moved to Zanzibar, which
Mhm.
was a failing point to me, but a lesson learned. And it was a chance to meet the next person that would groom the future, whose name was Naeem Johnson. So in this book, I'm talking about all these names that you never heard of before in house music. And it's intertwined with my partner, Henry Kronk,
Yep.
that really fuses the streets with the music and the culture and giving credence to a lot of the dancers that were engaged in it.
What I
So do you want me to stop it right now? Because I can keep going.
No, you're good. I was gonna comment. One of the things I really admire about the book is there's dozens of interviews. Like there are also interviews of people, and the book is not written in first person for the listener. So it's a memoir, but the way it reads, DJ Disciples, it's being said like DJ Disciple goes to like it's third person. So it reads like a cultural analysis, a cultural history of house music, not just from the music standpoint, but from the political standpoint when you talk about the crack epidemic, the social standpoint, when you talk about the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and mixed with the internal struggle that you're dealing with in the club scene with the different kind of issues and people that are getting blackballed, you included. I want to take us now to what you do eventually, which is you go to London and you go to the UK, and there's another scene happening across the pond with Garage. So talk us about how that experience was for you, kind of what was the impetus for you to get over there, and who were some of the players that was really foundational for you in that period of your life.
So basically, Roger Sanchez is the person that introduced me to the West Coast scene and the West Coast rave scene, which was like happening in San Francisco, Seattle, and Denver. And it was the first time that I was able to play with the UK branded Wiki crew, right? And so you had Mark Farina out there, Derek Carter, and it was a merging of different scenes within the rave scene culture where you can travel from place to place
Mhm.
and being part of this rave where you would meet figures like Doc Martin and Marcus Wyatt. So when it comes down to the UK, I met a guy named JP Furman through DJ Camacho. And Camacho had already started going to the UK. And so one of the people I found out I meet right off the boat, right off the airport was Phil Asher, right? So Phil Asher and a number of other people. And so I start my debut at the Lakota in Bristol. And this was 1992. And I've had like a success there. And on radio, he introduces me to Bobby and Steve. And
Mhm.
so these relationships that I've had that's nurtured in this book, it showcases how I was able to work more than any New York Black DJ in the UK. And
Mhm.
so we're not just talking about the signature clubs like when I broke Show Me Love at Ministry of Sound, but we're talking about Garage City, Paul Trouble Anderson's The Loft, And so what JP did was he didn't just put me in the London central scene, but he put me in the northern scene,
Mm,
which was with Stephen Rain and Hard Times. And as much as you have Feel Real, these influential clubs, you also have the northern scene, which is in Leeds, Manchester, Middlesbrough, the Sugar Shack, Manchester with Sankey's, all these different clubs. So I started gaining my name
mm,
in those clubs. In the meantime, going back to the blackball situation, what wound up happening was because I was blackballed, my sound started changing. So I was the first DJ to really premiere a guy named Todd Edwards,
mhm.
which is UK Garage aficionado. And I started working with Grant Nelson, who was another UK garage legend. I started going in the studios. I started working with Basement Jacks, a lot of different UK outfits, and it started to change my musical DNA. And
Mm,
so, what I had when On the Dance Floor hit in 1994, I was working with Smack Productions, but profiling a guy named Todd Edwards.
mm,
And these records had a huge impact since 1994 in the charts. So not only was I making my foothold as a DJ, by that time I had already been named one of the top 100 DJs in DJ Magazine, right? And so when you get named top 100 DJ in DJ Magazine, you get booked 100-fold. You start stretching out to like at least 100 gigs a year,
that's-
right? So I mean, when you look at my career, there's about 500 documented places that I played at, but there's 275 to almost 300 clubs that's listed that you can find online of where I've DJed, but no bigger place than in the UK, right? Because once I became so popular and the radio show became popular, two things started happening.
mhm,
One, my radio show was getting so popular that Kiss FM wanted me to do a regular radio show, and I was working with Tony Walker, a guy that was from Sheffield who did parties called "I Love to Be," and he still does them. And we did something called the Transatlantic Mix. So I became the first American DJ to have a show in the UK that covered all of the UK. We did all of it, right? So you're doing that, and then I was getting so much music that not only was I playing it on the radio, but I was utilizing my journalism skills to profile a lot of these artists and do write-ups for a lot of the records. That led me to working with pseudo.com. Pseudo.com was one of the first, um, I guess, online platforms that you can see. So basically, I was the first American DJ that was vlogging. What you see people doing now, like they go on location to different places around the world and they showcase what I was doing. I
mhm.
was doing this in 1996. So when I was in LA, going back to the LA scene, I got hooked up with Marcus Wyatt, who turned me on to Kim Benjamin. And
Mhm.
what Kim Benjamin did was she was able to globalize my name where I was doing like 40 and 50 state clubs, like, 50 dates a year around the world. So you had the UK, but I was traveling around the world, getting exposed to places in Japan, going to Australia, going to Canada on a regular basis.
And on
Uh,
a on
to the
a
point, obviously, that you can see that inevitably I had gotten in a plane crash,
yeah,
right? And that kind of happened to me. And so I also talk about in this book, the mentality that the mental health that DJs feel pressurized in, you know, doing these many dates around the world, right?
that's what
And
I wanted
so,
to ask about on a personal level. How are you dealing with this? And so that's one question. And then the second question is, how are you also picking the songs that you're now playing? Because now you're getting 10x, which you were getting before, 100x.
right.
Everybody wants you to play their song. How do you now make a decision? Because now you're well known around the world. So both questions.
Well, I mean, basically, people know my musical appetite based on the records that I do. So obviously, your records become your signature. But I always play for the people that was there, and I always did my homework to understand what the musical appetite, because music is a language, and you have to understand the musical language. And house music is such a universal language. right? And so that's what people really, really understood. Like, they would see me play and they would be like, well, how does he really, really know what I really like? And
Mm,
it's because I heard a lot of the DJs that came before me, right? And as the book unfolds, it stops becoming a singular memoir, but it becomes like a movement, right? In the beginning, we talk about our personal journey,
yeah.
right? But then we go from there to like, okay, rather than centering about DJ Disciple, which is the usual narrative, I start to amplify the people and the places that make house music what it is,
Mm,
right? So clubs like the Shelter, Langston's, the Choice, Kiss FM, the Pirate, I give people a voice that didn't get no voice in these books, that's never gotten a chance. And I kind of shine on them. I don't disappear in the book, but I make room for other people to shine in the book. You know what I'm saying? So we tie it together. And, with the help of Henry Kronk, this was intentional because it reflects the spirit of house music itself,
mm,
right? Because it's communal, house music is collaborative, and, by broadening that focus, the book, it's not ego driven. It's not an ego driven model like you get with a lot of DJ memoirs. And it challenges the idea that legacy is built alone.
mm,
Instead, the book really shows that legacy can also be built in community,
mm.
right? It can show you that by honoring the voices that barely make it on the front cover, right? Because without those people, the actual scene would not exist,
Yeah.
right? And so when I'm hearing other DJs play and doing that studying, it's because of those records I've been reviewing, listening to the radio shows that those DJs have, even though there wasn't an online presence. You would buy the tapes, or you would get the CDs, or you would listen to people like Pete Tong or Danny Ramplin, or open those measures, and then you would have you could get a broader, a collection of what the musical appetite is for that, and listening to the resident DJs as well.
Yep.
That gives you a great musical appetite.
And for all of the travel, thank you for that, David. And for all of the travel, how are you dealing with this on a mental and also like physical? How are you dealing health wise?
Right. So the book displays, what DJs go through as far as their mental health and what they have to go through. But I had a great management team that knew how to pace things, that knew how to work with my itinerary to give me enough time to do what I need to do. So they was able to format all my travels correctly. That didn't happen with a lot of DJs. And because of that, some DJs committed suicide. Some DJs got logged onto drugs because house music and drug culture went hand in hand. Although I kind of break down how that bias happens, wherein if I'm going to a rave scene and I see loads of kids doing drugs, I'm from the hood. And so when you get arrested out here, you doing some serious time. Whereas when you in the rave, you ain't getting that kind of time. So I also kind of show that differentiation, right? In the book. We show that. And
And
so
oh, so keep going. Keep going.
yeah. And so basically, so what happens is that in the UK scene,
Yeah.
right, much like people want to move forward and have a balance, there were a lot of black DJs that also might have felt marginalized, right? And so the US sound was, I guess, it was very influential, in the early 90s. But when the UK garage scene happened, it was kind of MC driven.
Hmm.
And a lot of the UK DJs found a space and a platform where they can build their own ecosystem,
Yeah.
right? And I was a part of that, but without getting away from it from what the northern scene added. So I had to compartmentalize what we liked in the US, what
Mm,
we liked in the UK, and then how did we deal with things globally,
mm,
right? So that's a lot of compartmentalization that you got to do to break up those different scenes, right? So at that point, you gotta realize in the early 90s, nobody knew how you caught AIDS, barely that much. So for a lot of the straight community in the black scene, for a lot of the college kids, they thought that house music was just something that just passed you by. But what they really showed in certain instances, that there was a homophobia that people would come up and say, listen, we don't want to hear that homo music because they started connecting and saying the HIV virus and connecting it to house music. And
Hmm.
there was a homophobia that went with it, right? And so a lot of the kids that grew up, listening to me house music, I was forgotten about once hip hop became stronger. Once you had your Biggie Smalls and your Tupacs and the Wu-Tang Clan and so forth, it kind of changed the format. And, you know, a lot of black DJs lost a lot of work behind that. And then on top of that, a lot of the major labels stopped investing in black artists in the dance departments. So what happens is hip hop gets bigger, house music is shuffled to the side, right? But in the European landscape, it never died. So what comes in and helps it along the road? Well, one of the things I talk about is bottle service.
Hmm.
And bottle service helped contribute to the rise of house music in Manhattan, in New York City. So, as you know, as the book displays, I'm one of the first DJs to play in a bottle service club in New York, the venue called Spy Bar.
Yep.
And from that, I was able to get Rehab, Pink Elephant, and so forth. And the bottle service, what that did was it brought a lot of the global house music artists, right? The house music artists that you hear today, the Bob Sinclairs, the David Guettas, and so forth, that are huge today, they laid their foundation by making their productions global,
Hmm.
right? And their success started outpacing what the producers and remixes in America were doing,
Yeah.
right? And so it made it more appealing. So that music fit with that musical style. And so once that started percolating, then you see, oh, okay, this is what happens with the globalization of house music. I started traveling to even more places.
Hmm.
This is how it connects to the EDM scene,
Yep.
right? How David Guetta kind of collaborates with Kelly Rowland, and then it spearheads into Calvin Harris, it spearheads into Diplo, it spearheads into Martin Garrix, and now they have their own EDM system,
Oh,
right? With the foundation.
I want to talk about the modern EDM scene and your thoughts about it. Before we get there, though, there's a couple points during this late 90s, early 2000s period that I want to highlight for the listener about David, because David is being very modest right now. He's speaking very broadly, but I want to give him his flowers because you have songs now at this point that are charting, Billboard, like really, really impressive Billboard Hot Dance Club charts, you Grammy nominated songs, and from your perspective, from where you started to where you're at now, and you're seeing hip hop kind of hurt a lot of your contemporaries in house music, but you're surviving, and if anything, you're flourishing. So, was there a sense of guilt, or was there a sense of I need to help other people out, a responsibility? Because, and then my second question is, you create a record label, Catch 22
Mhm.
Records, and I see. I don't want to make an assumption, but is there a connection between you starting this record label as somebody in this great position and house music in America declining to hip hop and other genres?
Well, what winds up happening is um, a lot of the record deals that independent artists and still is happening today were raw deals. Wasn't a good deal, right? And so what winds up happening is I decide because I got jerked on a record I collaborated with Dawn Tallman on, a record called "I Do Anything." I was jerked. I didn't feel good about it. So at that point, I started doing my own label. And my first successful records was Put Your Hands Up by the Black and White Brothers, right? And so it was a record that was played all over Ibiza and so forth. Meanwhile, in the UK, I did a remix called I'm Addicted, which was a UK anthem. But at first, the label did not want to put it out. And so I'm doing these remixes and I'm doing these productions. But until I start doing my own album, that's when I start getting the respect. And with Kim's help,
Yeah.
she gave me some of the best deals.
Hmm.
And so what winds up happening, I do my first album. It's most of the album got licensed. It's easy, got licensed to Zuli. And one of the things my manager was great at was getting my music platformed on a lot of different compilations.
Hmm.
So It's Easy was on the Ministry of Sound compilation, which gives you more visibility because at that time CDs were the way to go in the late 90s, right? And so the Caught Up record um, was appealing to the LGBTQ community, and that wound up being in Queer as Folk and being nominated for a Grammy, right? The same thing with Yes, which was on Head Candy. It came out from my album. So all of these records, so what all of that is bound to is different collaborations I had during my travels and been working on my label. So right now, today is July 11th, and I'm number 9 on Track Source for Deep Underground, right? And so I'm still making that music, but it's only through the collaborations. And so what wound up happening is because I was working in the bottle service scene, a lot of the DJs also became globalized. It wasn't a black and white DJs. It was DJs that were coming from Israel, DJs that was coming from Germany, from France, that were getting work in New York. And the brothers was not getting that kind of work because they couldn't adapt that sound to the audience. And that goes back to knowing musical language,
Yeah.
knowing what to play for who, and knowing how to understand the crowds that you're playing for. And so, I highlight, like when I played at Le Souk, there was a woman named Nikki McNally, and she didn't want to be this quote unquote model female DJ. And she felt her own pressure. And one of the things I go down in this book is I kind of highlight women and collaboration. The other thing I do is in this book, is we also make sure that the dancers and the promoters, but the dancers are also our collaborators. So you will hear an E. Joe Wilson, a Marjorie Smart. So we don't just connect the dots with just the DJ culture, but we take on the promoter culture, we take on the dancer culture. And that's why this is such an important book, because now a lot of these dancers, a lot of these promoters are revered today.
Yes.
But those records, 10 Steps to Heaven, Super Drums, a lot of the records I made, some of them were made on the rave scene, that Bad Boy Bill play. And so the more records I made, the more globalized my name became. And I was easier to market because of that. Now, within my own scene, I was like a black sheep. Because to some people, I would be considered a sellout. And then to other people on the EDM scene, was like, I'm undervalued because I can do more, but because you don't have that machine behind you, it's kind of harder to pull through. But I'm satisfied with that because might not get everything, but within everything you do, you always have a great idea to do something else.
I think
Right?
that's such a great point, David. And I apologize. I have not told the audience the name of your book.
The Beat, the Scene, the Sound.
The Beat, great title.
The Rise or Fall, Rebirth of House Music in New York City.
So please, 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 guys, get the book. It's a great book. I enjoyed reading it, and I learned way more than I thought I would learn because I was like, I've been to a few different shows. I've seen Louis Vega live. I'm a big fan of Black Coffee. I've seen him a bunch of times, and I've even noticed with some of them, I've been at the raves, and people will say like, "Oh, they sold out. They're not what they used to be." And so,
Okay, so let's dig deep into this, right? Okay,
yeah,
because Black Coffee, do you know how he first came to America?
a little bit, but not much. Break it.
Okay, so basically, a guy named Ian Friday, DJ Ian Friday, was the first one to bring him and Bodhisattva to
God.
America. So basically, because I had gone through this phase
Yep.
where I was at some point, I said as early as 2003, I was doing a lot of festivals,
Wow.
right? And so with the festivals, like it took me all over the world, right? Doing festivals in Malaysia, doing festivals in Spain, Aruba, and I explained how the festival scene worked, and later on how social media is influenced by that. But on the other hand, I was also influenced by DJ E-Man and his Bang the Party at Frank's. And I saw that as house music is fusion friendly, how the Afro elements in house music started to come to life. And it wasn't just Black Coffee, but it was other South African artists. And so we're the first book to really acknowledge black coffee in a book, and the Martinez brothers. And the the Martinez brothers played at Langston's.
Hmm.
And we had spoken word poetry at Langston's. Langston's was a venue which was the last black-owned gay club. So even though it was an LGBT club, we created a platform where artists can really shine and do their thing on an international level. And so we had DJs like Rich Medina come and play for us. We had like just legends, Carlos Sanchez, and they would do our next level nights. And this went on for years. And so that had kind of, my sound was changing for there. And then it kind of goes full circle. The book goes full circle because we talk about like the emergence of me DJing with DJ Sadiq, who is part of Soul Summit. And so doing these outside mobile venues goes back to that in the sense of me DJing at Coney Island, me Von King Park, all of these outside where you see New Jersey, they have a festival culture now with Jahad Muhammad, DJ Beloved, Mark Francis, all of these DJs. And we have our own with Curvin Marks, Ray Vasquez. You know, and New York has its own ecosystem, even Naeem Johnson. So you see that kind of coming around from when we first introduced the book from Grandmaster Flowers all the way around to the mobile DJing that you see now. That's kind of come back because there's the scene in Manhattan got so expensive that, and I talk about in the book, that a lot of people migrated to Brooklyn. And
Yep.
Brooklyn became the happening place for DJs, for men and women, women like Lisa Garcia, DJ Remarkable, and so forth. A lot of women now have, and black women, and you can really credit Honey Dijon because of her work on the Beyonce album. But
Mm.
even before that, we highlight in the book DJs like, Smoking Joe, Evil Olive, pioneers in the scene and black women that have had a voice, and DJs like Mickey Affleck.
Yep.
So we give them a platform in this book to showcase what made the rise of house music come back again. You know what I'm saying?
For the listener, you wouldn't get, especially the younger listeners, an Uncle Waffles who's killing it right now with like Afro House. You
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get people artists like her without these people he's mentioning. And so they are setting the scene, they're making it palatable, they're making that music accessible for the audience so that when the next generation comes, it's easier to break through. I I want to before we because the second question I'm about to ask is about what are you listening to right now or who should we be paying attention to right now? But before we get there, I want to talk more about the book and if you were to turn it into a film, it's kind of an interesting question. If you were to turn it into a film, what are some crucial scenes that people that must be in the book and that must be in the film version of this, and what is a song that would be playing?
I don't know about the song because everybody has their own kind of song.
True.
But this is the book. It stands alone because it's the only house memoir that combines faith, fatherhood, social media, and NYC street culture. No other book covers more scenes from one DJ that covers NYC, UK, Garage, Ibiza, Tokyo, it documents club politics, gay spaces, dance culture, pirate radio. It's a tool for survival. You know what I'm saying? And it critiques how algorithms and gatekeeping reshape DJ culture, right? And how the merit is replaced by metrics. And it's emotionally honest and it's culturally inclusive, right? So those are the things that really kind of spring out in the book. Like I've done a lot of different interviews, and on the interviews, I always try to bring something, say something different that people have not heard before, right? And so, because I've had so many residencies from the world, the Wild Pitch, the Choice, the Loft, and played at UK garage stations and so forth, it gives you a spreadsheet of all those things to document about how one person's platform can really really go far and how house music has come. So now where I'm at right now, I DJ at a bakery, Martha's Country Bakery in Williamsburg, right? And because I don't want to have to deal with club politics of promoters telling me, oh, well, how many people are you going to bring? or you don't, there's not enough drinkers coming through. All of those club politics that DJs have to face, I don't have to face none of that. I'm able to do three things at one time when I'm DJing at Martha's. I expose house music to everyday people, and I put my mixes up on 1001 track list. So I put mixes up every week. That's two. And then I can promote my book. When I promote my book and people hear the sounds, it helps me to sell my music on Track Source and Beatport.
Mhm.
So me DJing at the bakery pays me just as good as a club and does the job that three or four clubs could not do if I've not been playing it. So that's what. So when you DJ at unconventional spaces and you pioneer, much like I did with playing at the bottle service to create a platform for myself, I'm doing the same thing working at a bakery DJ. Now I'm a teacher now at PS307. I'm an educator, and one of the things that I have a goal of doing that has never really been done before is make a children's book about house music. We've had children's books about rap music,
Yep.
children's book about Afro, but now I'm trying to get a book published about doing children's access to third, fourth, and fifth graders about what is house music
I love
and
that.
really breaking that down.
I love that. I live in Jersey, by the way, so I'm gonna check out the Williamsburg spot that you're at.
Yeah.
That'll be really fun. Um, So bringing it more closer to modern day, and you've brought us now to this point. How do you see modern DJs and people in the house space breaking through with the advent of social media and TikTok and all these additional sites that you've mentioned? Is it harder from your perspective to break, or is it easier to break?
Well, for most modern DJs, it's going to be harder because, especially for American black men, because there's an easier access for other musical genres. But like with anything else, everything is going to come with a struggle. And for me personally, I'm happy seeing the next level of DJs that are coming up. I went to go see Amir Brooks at 55 Water Street.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's a promoter. Her name is Becky Nunez. She promotes a lot of up and coming DJs like Just the DJ, who is our resident now, and the boy is barely 20. You have DJ Jordan Pope, who's also within the same age grade. So you're starting to see a formulation of younger black males and female DJs create their own space and ecosystem. Their sisters, the sisters right now are taking it
Right.
100%. The sisters, the black women in our scene are taking it. There's no denying it, and I'm happy for them because it's such a male dominated industry.
Yep.
But when you see what a Ash Lauren is doing, or my sister from Brooklyn, what's her name, Natasha Diggs.
Mhm.
Natasha Diggs is doing excellent things for our scene, and so we have our own ecosystem with like Tony Touch, right? And he does his thing. We see Louis Vega on a regular basis, but then we see a lot of the newer people come up and have their own events. And I think that could bode nothing but good. Now, there is a marginalization in the scene because it's much harder for some of the UK acts like At Jazz and so forth to come over to play. One of the things I highlight in the book is bringing, returning it back, wherein I brought over Bobby and Steve from the UK to come and play in New York. And I think that as New York DJs and New York promoters, I think we need to kind of invest in. I mean, it's so much to pay for a work permit to work in the United States. It's much different from what you get in New York. But the London talent is worth it. There's so many great DJs in England, so many great DJs internationally that I would love to hear smash it here in the States for sure.
Second question in this more modern reflection period is what is a set of yours that you've had that what was one of the most memorable sets you've had around the world that for a good reason, and what was one of the most memorable that was maybe for a challenging reason? You had a hard time.
Well, I mean, I think that's in the book. I
Yeah.
think me DJing at GBH, and my dad had never seen me DJ before in his life.
Hmm.
That will always be the most touching moment because he invested in me. I didn't have a regular job. DJing was my job. And so when he sees me playing for hundreds of people and rocking the house,
Mm.
and he doesn't even want to be in VIP, he wants to see what his investment turned out to be. And for me to rock, that was the best set I ever played in my life because my dad was there and I wanted to show him that what you invested in was worth it.
Mm.
Right. And so I think and the fact that I was able to do a book and have my daughter's photo in the book because I wanted her to be able to, even though she may not be into house music or whatever, I wanted her to see that her father left footprints for her to show her what she can do and what she's capable of doing. And so I'm a girl dad. I raised my daughter, and I'm happy. I'm a happy girl dad to do that. And I will continue to do that. One of the most harrowing moments in my career was also displayed in the book where there was a shootout in the club, right? I had to dodge bullets in the crack era because you didn't know, whether in Brooklyn you was gonna get killed if you was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm.
One of the things I never really talked about in the book was when I was DJing in Fort Greene, I DJed with this guy named Ed Dewey Brown, and I played a set that was so fantastic. Even those Farragut and Fort Greene were beefing with each other. I could always walk through Fort Greene because I was the DJ that rocked the house. So
Mm.
that kind of helped patching. And till this day, right now, I am doing the Farragut Fort Greene reunions at at the park here, Commodore Barry Park, and hundreds of people come out every year, and we celebrate each other, and that's also in the book.
So freaking cool. So freaking cool. Um, get the book, guys. Let's repeat the name of the book again.
The beat, the scene, the sound, the rise, fall, and rebirth of house music in New York City.
I'm gonna put a link in the description, so there will be information there as well. Next question. We're a little towards the end, but not. We have like 4 or 5 questions left. If you could change anything about the house industry right now, what would it be and why?
Well, if I would change anything, I would change how um well, first of all, you can't change what's kind of set in stone. New York City right now is expensive for most people to live in.
Yes.
So the politics of New York is beyond what we can imagine, right? And for me, you know, I've been forgotten about so many times and come back. And it's a reminder that only what you do for Christ shall last. So I don't get caught up if, there's a lot of people that have moved forward and they moved past me and they've done better. I don't think about those things. I think about how was I able to serve? Because there's power in serving. So that's kind of what I think about it.
Mm.
But when I look at the house scene right now, there's always going to be things that could be better about it. I
Yeah.
mean, people get on other people's cases about the button pushers or the performance narrative, but I just think that that's part of the evolution of the scene, and I don't frown upon it as much as other people do. There are DJs that are faking it.
Yeah.
There are DJs that do all of that stuff, but they haven't been able to live a full DJ life. A lot of them. And even though there are people that's doing the social media thing, you would want it to be in a situation where people would book you based on talent, not just on the social media metrics. But we're not living in that kind of world. And it's okay because if you have enough determination, you can get to where you need to get to. Most of the messages I put out in house music are positive messages because I really feel like a lot of the times, like the DJ game is a struggle. It can be a struggle, and it's a lot harder. There's guys that are DJing for free, and just to be put on. They don't really value the money. They just think about it as I just want to get on,
Mm.
and I understand that because you're hungry. And I wouldn't say that I'm above it because I'm not in that person's position.
Yep.
But there are people that are hungry for this work to work as a DJ. And it's very hard because you have a lot of dance floor politics. I had to hire Craigslist dancers to dance for me, and they become once again my partners because I don't really trust a promoter when they bring their people, but they not may not understand my musical language.
Yep.
The dancers I bring, they set the mode right so
Mm.
that there can be no discussion about it and everybody's back to the music.
What would you say to a young black DJ right now who is trying to preserve the roots and the culture of house, but are navigating that with the current trends of house and how it changes so much over time?
Well, your networking skills is got to be just as good as your any equipment that you buy.
Mm.
So a lot of times you get to when you go out and you're hustling when you go out. When you go out to these clubs, you're on a job interview. And depending on who you meet at this interview can determine, who you're associated with. You are who you're associated with. So you have to associate with the right kind of group that could believe in you.
Mm.
Some of those groups turn into management companies. It could be a promoter that's a big time promoter and they invest in you because they see that you come out and you really about this music and they might want to invest in you. That's the same thing that happened to me. It was a promoter that kind of invested in me and said, hey, listen, I believe in your sound. Let's push this sound. Let's get you the way you need to go. So there's a lot of different factors. But I think definitely networking is a positive way for you to go forward in this music industry.
And my final question, as you've grown, what was the best piece of advice that somebody's given you in your career progression?
Well, a lot of people have given me a lot of great advice. Sometimes you have to, I guess, think within yourself and be confident because you have to have strong skin in this game. And you have to love yourself enough to feel that you're worth the time and investment that you put into the things that you do. And so I put out a record called Stop Cutting Yourself Short, right? There's two records I put out this year. Stop Cutting Yourself Short. And another record that I put out was Your Victim Card Has Been Declined, right? You cannot play the victim just because you don't get the things that you want at that time. Sometimes it is a waiting game. I
Mhm.
think that the great thing about house music is that everybody, if you're committed to it, everybody gets their time to shine.
Mhm.
Your time will come, but you don't need to play the victim to get your time.
David Banks, DJ Disciple, legend in the house scene, and I'm excited and honored to give you your flowers here today. And I highly, highly recommend everybody to listen to your work. Please tell us where we could find you.
Well, basically, you can see me on the tracks or charts just constantly. But I mean, if you go to my Instagram page, DJ Disciple NYC, I'm always updating. But I'm working 5 jobs now as a girl dad. You know what I mean? I do voiceover work. I play drums at the church. I DJ at a bakery. I work at a school. I collaborate with a lot of different writers and singers. So I'm committed 100% to the music, but I'm committed to God first. I'm
Mhm.
committed to Jesus first. So, but I also understand what it feels like to play within different communities and work with them and know their musical language and benefit from that and be able to serve in that as well.
It was a real pleasure, David. Thank you again.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.